Hey everybody, Nick here. Just got back from NABShow 2025, and I thought I'd go through some of the stuff that I thought was the most interesting, and I'm just going to post short little videos about each thing. So take a look at the channel for updates as I kind of post those videos in sequence, but I'm going to start with Blazar. And I'm going to start there because I think their new Mantis 1.3x anamorphic lenses are the most impressive thing that Blazar have done by a wide margin. I've said publicly before to some controversy that I don't think there's anything in the anamorphic space under $4,000 that I would really want to use professionally on a regular basis. And other people have different opinions, and that's fine. But for me, there's really nothing in that space that I like enough to use that way, or find reliable enough, or find that works with the kind of images that I like to create and the workflow that I like to do. The Viltrox Epic, I think, are really nice lenses, and those come in under that mark, but they have pretty bad close focus, or it's average close focus, I guess, like 2.5 feet on most of the lenses. And for me, that's kind of a deal breaker. I really like to get closer a lot of the time. I don't like to use diopters, but other than that, the Viltrox image looks fantastic. Above that, I like the Proteus lenses quite a bit from Laowa. They're very heavy and big, but they're fantastic in just about every way. There wasn't anything in the budget space, in the sort of $1,000 to $2,000 space, that I personally liked. I know a lot of people really enjoy the Remus 1.5 stretch and the Kato 2X stretch, but for me, their optical compromises were just way too big to use on an ordinary professional basis, and the flares to me were not very interesting at all. They always have that line that goes all the way across the frame, and to me it's just very distracting and just screams like budget anamorphic, and I don't like it. And some people love it, and that's great. And if you want to make beautiful artwork with those lenses, I'm not going to complain and argue with you, but me personally, I don't like them. Now, the Mantis I find to be really, really interesting. So it's a 1.3 stretch, but they have an oval iris in there. Now, I had previously thought that that was blocked by some patents owned by Hawk or someone else, but it's beautiful. It's a very nice iris. I think it's 11 blades, and it closes in this beautiful oval. I took some videos of it from the front, looking through the optical system, and so that oval is being exaggerated 30% because of the 1.3x stretch squeeze. If you look from the back, you'll see the actual shape of the oval. But regardless, it's a really nice actual oval iris, and it closes down really beautifully. And so you get more of a 2x oval in the image without having an actual 2x squeeze, for which Blazar's optics, I think, are a little bit too aggressive for the 2x. The Katos are an actual 2x stretch. They don't use inserts or irises to achieve that, but they have, in my opinion, too many compromises. There's so much squeezing on the sides. I'm not a huge fan of the image. But the Mantis, being a 1.3x stretch, has fewer compromises in that way. It's closer to a spherical lens. But interestingly, I think the Mantis has by far the best flare of any Blazar optics I've ever seen, going back from Greatjoy to their adapter, to the Remus, the Katos, and now this is my favorite flare of anything they've done, and I consider it totally usable on a professional level, at least the flare, as far as that's concerned. I didn't get enough time with the lenses to see them sort of in the real world to know what does this image actually look like and the kind of work that I like to do. So I would want to test that a little bit more, but this is the first budget anamorphic I've seen for which the lens flare is not a disqualifying factor for me. Now, it has all that going for it, right? There's quite a bit of resolution. It has an interesting flare. It doesn't have the compromises that most of the other budget anamorphics have. But there is, in my opinion, one significant drawback, and that is what you might describe as sort of an anti-swirl or pincushion in the bokeh. Now, the lens itself is very close to rectilinear, so straight lines will be straight in the image. But out of focus areas, the bokeh, instead of swirling and hugging around the center of the image, as you would see in a lot of other barrel distortion anamorphic lenses, or things like the Helios lens, or other lenses that swirl, Petzval design lenses where that bokeh has a certain shape that tends to hug the edge of frame. These lenses, the Mantis 1.3x anamorphic, do something that's like an anti-swirl. I think all the Blazar anamorphics do this to some extent, but the bokeh pushes in at the center of the image. And I find that that can be distracting, or something that I'm not looking for. There is a pretty easy fix for it, but it also may come with another compromise. So you can, in Resolve, or basically any nonlinear editor, do some lens correction. And so if you do something like a negative 10% to 20%, so minus 0.1 to minus 0.2, anywhere in that range, you'll basically correct out that anti-swirl, and you'll also introduce a little bit of barrel distortion into what was otherwise a pretty rectilinear image. And so you may be, sort of killing two birds with one stone here. Fix the bokeh problem, introduce a little barrel distortion, which you may want in an anamorphic lens, and that's pretty great. You get, almost everything you want. The one artifact you're going to introduce if you do that is that now lens flares, which were nice and straight, are now going to bow downward or upward, depending on where they are in your image. A compromise, a way around it, introduces another compromise. I think these are interesting things. Again, I still think this is by far the most interesting thing that Blazar has ever done. The close focus on all of them is great. It's basically spherical levels of close focus because it's not that aggressive of a stretch. They're tiny, super lightweight. You could fly them on a Ronin 4D. You can do just about anything you want with these lenses. So I'm very interested to see more of them. I did a little bit of testing with that flare. We threw them into the cabinet at the Blazar booth so I could find a darker area. The showroom floor is very bright, but you don't really start to understand the characteristic of a flare unless you have a darker area. That's where flares really shine. You have a dark scene, dark room, nighttime environments, and then you blast that light, and then you can really see all of the elements of the flare against a dark background, which is otherwise more difficult in a bright environment. So we threw it into that cabinet, and what I really like about it are a couple of things. So there are two primary elements. There is an orange streak, which doesn't go all the way across frame, and then another blue streak, which also doesn't go all the way across frame. Both excellent. If the area where the flare is occurring is out of focus, those streaks can turn into more oval shapes, which I also really like. So you get different things, and none of them are, characteristic of more budget anamorphic lenses. There are a couple vertical secondary elements and a couple spherical elements in there to the flare. They're not huge, they're not extremely pronounced, and it does take quite a bright and direct source to achieve them. So you're not going to see this flare a lot unless you really intentionally create it. You're going to shoot into a bright source or a flashlight or some kind of practical light. It's going to have to go straight down the barrel of that lens. But when you do get it, it's very interesting. So again, I think this is one of the more interesting things at the show, easily the best thing Blazar has ever made, in my opinion, and possibly, a budget anamorphic that's actually usable, in my opinion, for professional level work. I don't know yet. I would love to see more of these lenses. I don't have any contact whatsoever at Blazar. I've never exchanged a single email with anyone at the company, so all of this is just my interest, my opinion. I just walked up to the booth as a regular, ordinary human being. No connections with the company, but I figured you guys would like to hear this. There's not a lot of footage or information available about them other than what people at NABShow have been able to provide. So that's going to be it for this on the Blazar Mantis 1.3x lenses. My understanding is that the three middle lenses, 35, 50, 75, are going to be shipping next month, and that the 25 and 100 will ship the month after that, May and June, respectively, I think. I could be wrong about that, or things could get pushed back, who knows, but really, really interesting stuff. And despite my opinions on budget anamorphic glass and whether or not I would personally use them, I'm delighted that they exist. I'm really glad that there are companies pushing this space forward. There are a lot of people who really enjoy these lenses. So whether or not I do, I think it's great that these companies are succeeding in the marketplace because it means that we get more options, we get more development. If people hadn't liked the Remus and the Kato, they wouldn't have developed the Mantis in the first place. So even though I personally haven't used those lenses, I'm glad that they were successful. So you can love me, hate me, love my opinions or hate them. I'm just giving it to you as I see it, and hopefully you guys get something out of it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.